Hey y'all, my name is Shannon Ray. Before I start this video, I just wanted to show you my mug. Can you see it? Can you see it? So cute and so appropriate for today. I just want to start off first by saying a big, huge thank you. Thank you to everyone who not only watches the videos and subscribes to the channel, but also to those of you who have taken the time out of your day to go the extra mile and leave a comment or send me a message, a text, a phone call, whatever it is so appreciated. It is so affirming. It is so special. Honestly, I really wanted for people to know that they weren't alone in some of the struggles that they were going through, to also talk about the things that God has done for me specifically. It feels like I'm on track, and it feels like this is helpful to more than just me. And so for that, I just say thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for supporting. It is so appreciated. When I think of how good God is and how He has connected us to each other, especially through a platform like this, like the girl could shout.
You know it makes me wanna shout, throw my heels off and shout, throw my hands up and shout, kick my heels off, or whatever he said.
And I know what you're thinking. Was it necessary, Shan? Yes, and you're welcome. Sometimes you just gotta praise Him where you are for what He's done, not just what He's going to do, okay? Thank yous for all of your yesterdays are still valid today. Hallelujah. If you are new here, I offer you my sincerest salutations. We come together each week to celebrate life, to talk through life, through the journeys, the ups and the downs. We pursue happiness and we pursue purpose. If you're into that sort of thing, I would highly suggest you hit that like and subscribe button. There is more greatness to come. Invite a friend. Tell them Shan sent you. So real quick, I was bothered, annoyed, dismayed, befuddled, in confusion. I would even go so far to say assaulted by the onslaught of Kanye West and Kim Kardashian and all of their mess. No matter where I turned, I couldn't escape it, okay? I have done so much to not keep up with the Kardashians. Let me tell you something, okay? That is the one time I want to be left out of that number, not your number. I could not escape the barrage of unmerited, unnecessary coverage of every tweet, text, or irrational thought brought to you live by Kanye West. And before you scroll, before you start loading your arsenal with your comebacks or your defenses or your offenses of Kanye, I'm not here to speak to Kanye West's character, or I think he's Ye now. Is he Ye now? Mr. West, I'm not here to speak about him. I'm not here to speak about Kim Kardashian or what she's got going on. I think Kanye West is a very talented man. I think that Kim Kardashian is a very smart businesswoman. And what I'm talking about here today is not so much who's right or wrong in their situation, but what I see and how it's impacting me. And you might be thinking, how does the relationship of two people that you don't know have an impact on you? Well, let's talk about it. The duality of Kanye West speaking to his desire for the Black community or his community of supporters to go after Pete. Is it Pete Davidson? Pete Wentz? Peter Piper? Pick a. Nope, I digress. For Kanye West to, in one breath, launch assaults against Pete, Kim's new boyfriend, while also tonguing down his latest girlfriend and the slew of relationships that he seemed to have publicly had since their separation. At the same time, be talking about Kim keeping him from his kids and being so concerned about his children, comparing himself to old dude from Get Out, but also be buying trucks filled with flowers to deliver to her home, buying the house across the street from her, going so far to tell her that he is her biggest fan, all while trying to actively turn the world, under his influence at least, against her and against her boyfriend. It bothered me. And I couldn't figure out why it was bothering me so much, because again, I don't know these people. As I was scrolling through the interwebs, as I was scrolling through every social media app that I have, and also doing the due diligence to remove myself from following certain accounts, thinking that that would help, going and turning the channel if it was coming up on something I was watching on TV, staying away from social media altogether, and yet it was still sitting with me what was happening between the two. What it comes down to is that seeing the rallying of someone trying to turn people against you, whether it's the truth or a lie, I don't know. But seeing it happen in real time in front of all of us, it's been hard to watch. And it was hard to watch because it was hard to experience. There was a part of me that could relate to what it must be like to be in Kim's position. Again, I don't have all the facts. I don't know the whole story, and I really don't want to. At the end of the day, this is supposed to be a private thing between the two of them. And this could be a little pot kettle action here, right? You could look at me the same way because I've shared a great deal of my divorce story. But there are ways to go about things. There are ways to share your story in a way that's maybe helpful to someone else, in a way that admits where you need help or the places that you made mistakes. Instead, what I feel like I'm witnessing is the open abuse, and I know that's a heavy word, manipulation, a little bit of entitlement as well, of someone who feels like because they're not getting their way, they're going to change the narrative. And that's just not sitting well with me. I realized I was seeing experiences in there I hadn't really dealt with yet. There were moments, there were things that happened that instead of kind of addressing in that moment or addressing directly after the moment, I couldn't really get to. There were too many other things that I was worrying about. I was in survival mode rather than being equipped to handle what was happening. So those tweets, those texts from this stranger on the internet ended up sparking something in me. It was going beyond being bothered. I was triggered, and I didn't understand why, because I live my life in authenticity, and I am authentically the happiest I have ever been, more confident than I've ever been, more sure about the next step, more sure about what God has for me. So someone who is happy, right? Someone who is doing all of these things to make themselves feel good, is someone who is genuinely feeling God pour into their soul, who is feeling full. Why am I still able to be triggered? That's when I realized that I'm still grieving. So for today's video, I want to talk about what it's like in real time to be moving forward with your life, even while you're still grieving. When I think about grief, I actually think about a few different stories from the Bible. I think about how Jesus was at the grave of Lazarus and he was weeping right before he raised him from the dead. I think about Job. Everybody knows the story of Job when he lost everything, his spouse, his friends, his children, his health, yet he remained a good and faithful servant. I also think about Naomi and Ruth and the way that they still chose to come together to make choices based on their grief. And their paths were a little bit different, but they were still intertwined. God has told us there will be trouble. But what I didn't ever think about is what grief would look like on me in real life. How can someone still be grieving when they are so filled with joy? Being triggered is a symptom. What we have to do is figure out what the source is. Initially, when I realized that I was actually triggered, I started, as I said, treating the symptom. Make the thing that's triggering me go away. Mute the sites that are posting Kanye. Don't pay attention to hashtags. Try your best not to look at social media so much. If you're treating the symptom, it's going to come up in a different form. If you treat the cough, eventually you're still gonna have to worry about the sneeze. What you need to do is figure out how to cure the cold. I wanted to understand why I couldn't shake it off after I've done my due diligence to get rid of the trigger, right? I was still feeling off. I was still feeling a bit of melancholy. I was still feeling that there was something kind of tugging my heart down, and I didn't understand why, because like I said, things are good. I'm living, okay? I'm living on purpose, okay? I'm living in purpose. I am enjoying my life. I am enjoying the luxuries that I am able to afford. I am enjoying the exclusivity of this time in my life, who has access to me and who doesn't, who I spend time with and who I don't, what I engage in and what I don't. I've been enjoying that. And so I wanted to feel that. I wanted to get back to that feeling. I didn't want that spot of melancholy. I didn't want it, because the more it seemed like I would concentrate on it, the more it felt like it was continuing to grow. And I stopped. If I don't want to feel this anymore, then perhaps I should recognize the actual source and treat that. Because if you don't, it's just going to come up again. So I thought back to when I first stepped into this space of going through a grieving process. And grieving is going to happen with any change you make. So if you are a new mother and you just gave birth to this beautiful baby, there's going to be a part of you that's going to mourn what it was like before you were a mom and you had more freedom. When you got married, you probably had a period where you were mourning your single life because now you're melding yourself into someone who is a part of a couple, a part of a family. There is going to be mourning at every stage, grief at every stage, and it doesn't mean that you're not grateful for it, doesn't mean that you're not ready to go where you're headed. It just means that there is a part of you that has changed and you have to honor that change. Grief is honor. So I started to try to unpack what was happening. I wrote out in my journal what it was about the tweets and the text that I could relate to and what was that making me feel. And I started doing the work, and oh, you know how the Holy Spirit is. God came in, God took over. What was happening was a remembrance of trauma, something that was still living in my body, something that I hadn't quite gotten to the point of addressing yet. Around this time last February, I hit a major roadblock. A person like me doesn't give up on anything easily. Not a dream, not a relationship, nothing. So to get to the point where I was last year, where I had finally learned, and I won't go into much detail because I don't think it's necessary to elucidate what I'm trying to share with you, but just imagine finally reaching to the place where you realize that you can't change something, no matter how much willpower you put behind it, no matter how many books you read or things you try, no matter how you change your attitude. You can't change someone else. You can't make someone do anything else. You can't love someone into good behavior. You can't will yourself into a different experience. You have to remove yourself from the things that don't serve you rather than trying to bend them to your will. Giving up on something that was so important to me felt like the world was crashing in. Anyone who has done any authentic healing knows that it is not linear. The process can be ugly, but the fruit is so beautiful. There is no growth without some trauma. Sometimes your seeds are watered by your own tears. So instead of making the habit of running from my emotions just so I can survive them, I decided to sit in them. I was triggered because I was remembering what it was that I was going through this time last year. I think one of the reasons that so many people go through life without experiencing true healing is because this is hard work. And we confuse ourselves, we trick ourselves by thinking that the way that we are going to make sure that we don't get into these situations anymore isn't by going through the full healing process. It's by setting up parameters. We say, oh, I will never be played like that again. I will never trust someone that much again. I will never love someone like that again. And so what do? We go through the process of hardening our hearts, go through the process of changing our personalities and deciding that we're gonna be different this time. We're gonna be stronger this time. We're gonna be smarter this time. And to do that, we're gonna keep you at bay. We're gonna keep you away. We're gonna keep the new person or the new thing that hasn't been qualified away so that we can keep ourselves protected instead of taking the time to go through the healing process and learn what we need to learn, figure out where we made the misstep, figure out how we can learn how to see these things a little bit sooner so that maybe we don't have to go through so much of the trauma. Instead, we set up parameters that are actually punishments for ourselves, not hurting anyone else when we decide to harden our hearts. We're keeping ourselves from the very love or thing that we want by setting up all of these gates, these walls, these defenses around us, and they keep out all of the things that we've been searching for. We tether ourselves to those very traumatic events. We tether ourselves to the past. I talked a little bit earlier about the story of Naomi and Ruth, and I really started thinking about it as I was sitting in my feelings of grief, sitting through the fact that I was recalling a dark time and that I was dealing with that dark time in my present life. The duality of those emotions, the duality of what was happening for me in real time and what I experienced then. Naomi and Ruth are such a great example of that. Naomi was a woman from Judea who fell in love with Elimelech, Nick, Nat, Patty, Whack. Sorry. Naomi married this guy. They went on to have 2 sons. Those sons married Moab women. Those women were Oprah. No, that's my girl. Ophrah. I'm really struggling with the names today. O is what we're gonna call her as a nickname. No disrespect. And Ruth. A famine hit the city of Moab, and unfortunately it killed Naomi's husband and her 2 sons. Naomi made a decision. She wanted O and Ruth to have the opportunity to go out and remarry so that they would be covered, they would be taken care of. Naomi herself had given up on any of those possibilities. God would use names to also describe character. So Naomi in the Bible means sweet and gentle, a kind woman. So it tells you about the character of Naomi before she encountered grief. After she encountered grief and trauma and devastation, she, like many of us, became bitter. O made the decision to return to the childhood home, and Ruth decided to stay with Naomi. Together they traveled back to Naomi's hometown of Judea, and they actually were redeemed. However, as Ruth was traveling back to the place that she started from, she felt so bitter that she would make people address her by the name Mara. Mara means bitter, quite literally. Ruth was moving forward. She was doing what she could to stick to the plan that God had laid for her. But Naomi, so wrapped up in her emotions, in her bitterness, she changed her name and tethered herself to her pain rather than her current experience. I was doing everything I could to not be Mara. I was doing everything I could to be Ruth. Truth is, we can allow ourselves to experience it both. Sitting in those memories, I was sitting in my Mara moment through the truth of what I felt, the truth of my frustration, the truth of all of those feelings that I had back then. This grief, these experiences are going to give me more wisdom than I had, so that when I come up against the next thing, not only am I armed with that wisdom, I'm also armed with new tools and resources. I can be Ruth, even if I've had a Mara moment. Grief looks different on everybody. There's no way that you can exactly do it wrong unless your intention is not to move beyond it. Being triggered means that you are still in process, that you are still making progress. I didn't understand why I was triggered in the moment because I thought honestly that I had healed from all of it. But what I realized was that it wasn't me. This isn't me mourning a relationship. That's gone and it is well for me. This is the mourning of all of the things that came after that, because when you heal, you bring up the things from years past, from childhood, from your teenage years, from your 20s, from dating, from friendships, from relationships with your family. You bring all of that up, and that is a lot of work. And so as you're coming against things, as you're coming into realization, as you're coming into the strength, sometimes God will even reveal things through your triggers, where there's work left to do, where there's opportunities for Him to shine. I needed comfort in that moment, and I experienced God as a comforter. I needed help in that moment, and I experienced God as a helper. There is nothing that is wasted. Your triggers, your emotions, it all is a part of the plan. You can still be grieving and still be celebrating your life. You can still be grieving and still be really grateful for where you are. And so I wanted to take the time today to talk about that, to talk about what it is to still be grieving and in complete love with who you are today. Your grief doesn't negate your growth, doesn't defer you or eliminate you from the next level or the next step. It's proof that you haven't given up on yourself. You're still feeling, you're still experiencing. It's proof that God is still with you. He is still urging you to wholeness. He is still urging you to being healed. So that's all I have today, guys. I hope it's a shorter one. I'm still working on that. I always say that every video, but I really am working on it. I want you guys to enjoy these as much as I enjoy making them, as much as I enjoy sharing. So if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a comment. I love to hear from you. Bye, y'all.